Disclaimer: this video was created with the assistance of artificial intelligence, AI, tools for research, script writing, narration, and visual generation. While every effort has been made to ensure historical accuracy, some elements may contain interpretation, reconstruction, or dramatization generated by AI. This content is intended for entertainment purposes. Rome, the Eternal City, the city of marble, temples, triumphal arches, and legions, the capital of an empire that stretched from the sands of Egypt to the forests of Gaul, from the deserts of Syria to the cliffs of Britain. Its emperors stood as giants: Augustus, the founder; Tiberius, the reluctant general; Caligula, the mad tyrant; and later Nero, the artist who set the city aflame. But between these famous names stands Claudius, an emperor like no other. To his family, he was a burden, a stammering fool unfit for public life. To the Roman Senate, he was a laughingstock. To the people, he was invisible. No one, not his mother, not his grandmother, not even Claudius himself, imagined he would rule Rome. And yet he did. Not only did he ruled well. He gave Rome stability, reformed its government, conquered new lands, and presided over one of its most ambitious eras of construction. His reign was one of contradictions, mocked but respected, weak in appearance but strong in action, a man underestimated at every step, who outlived and outmaneuvered all those who dismissed him. This is his story, the story of Claudius, Rome's forgotten child, Rome's unlikely survivor, and Rome's most underestimated emperor. Chapter 1: The Forgotten Child. Claudius was born on the 1st of August, 10 BC, in Lugdunum, a Roman city in Gaul, modern-day Lyon, France. His birth was an event of prestige. He belonged to the Julio-Claudian dynasty, the most powerful family in the empire. His father was Nero Claudius Drusus, one of Rome's greatest generals, a man celebrated for his campaigns deep into Germania. His mother was Antonia Minor, daughter of Mark Antony and Octavia, who was the sister of Augustus, Rome's first emperor. Claudius' bloodline was a direct link to the founders of the empire. By heritage, he seemed destined for greatness. But fate had other plans. Claudius' father, Drusus, died when the boy was just a toddler. His death left Antonia widowed, raising Claudius and his siblings alone. And while Claudius' elder brother, Germanicus, grew into a charismatic, heroic figure, beloved by the legions and adored by the Roman people, Claudius did not. From his earliest years, Claudius showed signs of physical weakness. He limped when he walked. His speech was slurred, broken by stammers. His head twitched with spasms. He drooled and sometimes laughed or shouted at inappropriate moments. In an age that celebrated strength, beauty, and eloquence, Claudius was mocked as unnatural, grotesque, and unworthy. His family was cruel. His mother, Antonia, reportedly called him a monster, a man whom nature had not finished. His grandmother, Livia, the powerful wife of Augustus, rarely spoke to him at all. His own sister, Livilla, openly declared that Claudius was an embarrassment to the family. Imagine growing up surrounded by Rome's most powerful dynasty, emperors, generals, senators, and being told every day you were not one of them. Because of this, Claudius was kept away from public life. While his brother Germanicus was celebrated in triumphs and paraded before the legions, Claudius was hidden at home. He was excluded from politics, denied military commands, and quietly pushed aside. Most families in Rome would have abandoned such a child entirely. But the Julio-Claudians saw one benefit to keeping Claudius alive. He was no threat. Unlike his ambitious cousins, Claudius could never be emperor. That, at least, gave him safety. But Claudius had something that went unnoticed. Where others wielded swords, Claudius wielded books. Denied a place in politics or the army, he buried himself in study. He read histories of Greece and Rome. He examined the lost civilizations of the Etruscans and Carthaginians. He studied law, rhetoric, and philosophy. Unlike many nobles who treated scholarship as an amusement, Claudius worked with the discipline of a true academic. He produced detailed historical works, including a history of the Etruscans and a history of Carthage, both sadly lost. He even wrote on language and grammar. Ancient sources tell us his works were thorough, serious, and well regarded. To the world, Claudius was a fool. But in the quiet of his study, Claudius was building something no one could see: knowledge, patience, and resilience. He was not destined for the battlefield, but he was preparing unknowingly for power. Chapter 2: Shadows of Tiberius. As Claudius grew into adulthood, Rome was ruled by Tiberius, the adopted son of Augustus. Tiberius was a capable general, but a cold, suspicious man. He never trusted those around him, and in the dangerous court of Rome, suspicion could be a death sentence. For Claudius, this meant one thing: he was better off ignored. Tiberius considered him harmless, laughable, and unfit for power. In an empire where ambitious young men were executed for being too visible, Claudius' weaknesses protected him. His limp and his stammer became a kind of armor. His brother Germanicus, on the other hand, was the very opposite. Tall, handsome, charismatic, Germanicus was beloved by the legions and adored by the Roman people. He was everything Claudius was not, but popularity was dangerous. Germanicus became too admired, too powerful, and soon rumors spread that Tiberius feared him. In the year 19 AD, tragedy struck. Germanicus, still young, fell mysteriously ill in the east. He accused Tiberius' governor of poisoning him and died soon after. Rome was plunged into mourning. Crowds filled the streets in grief. Statues were raised. Plays and songs praised the lost hero. And Claudius, once again, was left in the shadows. After Germanicus' death, suspicion turned to his family. His widow, Agrippina the Elder, and her children became rivals of Tiberius. Over time, they were accused of treason, exiled, or killed. But not Claudius. Because no one saw him as a rival, he was spared. He watched as his family fell around him, powerless to act, but also safe. Claudius was learning an important lesson. Invisibility was survival. Still, Claudius was not entirely hidden. He tried to participate in politics, even giving speeches. But his stammer and physical awkwardness made him the butt of jokes. Senators mocked his attempts. When he suggested reforms, he was laughed out of the chamber. To escape humiliation, he returned to what he did best: study. Books, history, grammar. He even wrote a history of Augustus, though it was too honest and critical to be published safely. Claudius' pen was sharper than people realized. Chapter 3. The Mad Reign of Caligula. After Tiberius came Caligula, the young son of Germanicus, Claudius' beloved nephew. At first, the empire rejoiced. Caligula was the blood of Germanicus, the hope of Rome. Claudius was suddenly brought closer to power. He was made consul, and for the first time, he had a public role. People pitied him, yes, but they also respected his loyalty to his family. The crowds cheered his presence, even if senators mocked him still. But Caligula's reign soon turned dark. The young emperor revealed himself to be unstable, paranoid, and cruel. He executed senators on whim. He declared himself a living god. He mocked the traditions of Rome, building temples to his own genius and even appointing his horse to a priesthood. For Claudius, this was both terrifying and oddly helpful. Caligula treated him as a family mascot, parading him as a figure of amusement. When Caligula hosted feasts, Claudius was forced to drink to excess and then mocked by the guests. It was humiliating, but it kept him alive. No one saw Claudius as a threat. He was simply the emperor's drunken uncle. Yet this period gave Claudius something unexpected: experience. He was closer to power than ever before. He watched how emperors ruled and how they fell. He saw Caligula squander support, alienate the Senate, and terrify the people. Claudius took mental notes. All the while, he continued his studies, quietly building his knowledge of law and administration. The clown at Caligula's table was secretly preparing himself for something greater. Then, in 41 AD, it happened. The Praetorian Guard had had enough of Caligula's madness. On a January morning, conspirators struck. In the palace corridors, they cornered the emperor and cut him down with swords. Caligula was dead. His wife and child were executed soon after. Rome was thrown into chaos. The city buzzed with rumors. Senators debated restoring the republic. Armies prepared to seize power. And in the palace, Claudius, the man everyone had ignored, was about to be discovered. Chapter 4. The Accidental Emperor. According to ancient sources, Claudius was found hiding behind a curtain. Terrified of being killed in the purge, he had retreated into the palace, trembling, hoping to escape notice. But the Praetorian Guard found him, and instead of killing him, they saluted him. To their eyes, Claudius was the perfect choice. He was of imperial blood, but not tainted with Caligula's madness. He was weak, yes, but that meant he would be dependent on their protection. The guards carried Claudius to their camp, proclaimed him emperor, and swore loyalty. The Senate was furious. Many senators wanted to restore the republic, but the soldiers had already made their decision, and in Rome, the loyalty of the army was all that mattered. And so, against all odds, Claudius, the stammering scholar, the family embarrassment, became the ruler of Rome. He was 50 years old. No one had expected him to live this long, let alone sit on the throne of the Caesars. But Claudius had survived by watching, learning, and waiting. And now his chance has come. Chapter 5. Governing Rome. Claudius had become emperor not through ambition, but by accident. Many in Rome assumed he would be weak, a puppet of the Praetorian Guard. Senators whispered that he would not last a year. but Claudius was about to surprise them. Behind the stammer and the limp was a man who had been studying government, law, and history his entire life. And unlike Tiberius or Caligula, Claudius actually wanted to govern, not merely to rule. One of Claudius' first challenges was legitimacy. He knew the Senate resented him. They had wanted to restore the Republic after Caligula's death. Claudius, however, had the loyalty of the Praetorians, and he used it wisely. He rewarded the guards with a large donative, a massive payment of money, ensuring their continued support. At the same time, he sought to win over the Senate. He was respectful in speech, cautious in his reforms, and often deferred to senatorial traditions. Though many senators sneered at him privately, Claudius made sure they had little reason to oppose him openly. But the most radical decision of Claudius was not his relationship with the Senate. It was his reliance on freedmen. Freedmen were former slaves who had been given their freedom. In Roman society, they were considered lowly, forever tainted by their past. No emperor before had entrusted freedmen with real power. But Claudius did. He elevated freedmen such as Narcissus, his secretary, Pallas, his financial administrator, and Callistus, who handled petitions. These men, loyal only to him, became his inner circle. Many senators were outraged. To them, it was an insult that men of slave origins were shaping the policies of the empire. But for Claudius, this was brilliant. Freedmen had no aristocratic ambitions. They could not claim the throne. Their power depended entirely on Claudius. By relying on them, Claudius created an efficient government, loyal directly to him. Claudius also proved to be a tireless administrator. He worked long hours reading petitions, hearing court cases, and making decisions himself. Unlike Caligula, who treated ruling as a game, Claudius took it seriously. Ancient historians even mocked him for being too dedicated, for acting more like a bureaucrat than an emperor. But that was exactly what Rome needed. He undertook massive building projects to improve Rome. He repaired aqueducts, ensuring fresh water flowed into the city. He expanded the port of Ostia, creating a safe harbor to feed the growing population. He improved roads and canals, making trade and travel more efficient. These projects may not have carried the glamour of gladiatorial games or golden palaces, but they were the backbone of the empire. They kept Rome fed, supplied, and functioning. Claudius also opened the government to more people. He granted citizenship to many provincials, men from Gaul, Spain, and the East. He even admitted nobles from Gaul into the Roman Senate, declaring that Rome's greatness came from its ability to absorb and include others. This was controversial. Some senators sneered at the idea of barbarians in their ranks, but Claudius argued that Rome itself had always been a city of outsiders, Etruscans, Latins, Sabines, united under one name. By expanding citizenship, Claudius was laying the groundwork for a truly imperial identity. Perhaps Claudius' greatest gift as a ruler was his patience. He did not lash out at mockery. He did not execute senators en masse like Caligula. He tolerated criticism, and he ruled by steady persistence. For years, people had mocked him as a fool. Now, step by step, he was proving them wrong. Chapter 6. The Conquest of Britain. By the year 43 AD, Claudius had stabilized his rule. The Senate had begrudgingly accepted him, the Praetorian Guard remained loyal, and the empire was at peace. But Claudius knew he needed more than stability. Roman emperors were expected to achieve military glory. Augustus had expanded the empire, Tiberius had commanded legions, and even Caligula had staged mock campaigns. Claudius, mocked as weak and bookish, needed a conquest to prove his worth. That conquest would be Britain. Britain was not unknown to Rome. Julius Caesar had invaded nearly a century earlier, but the Romans had never fully conquered it. The island was mysterious, shrouded in mist, and filled with tribes the Romans considered barbaric. For generations, emperors had dreamed of adding Britain to the empire, but none had succeeded. Claudius seized a chance. He ordered the legions north, across the Channel, to do what Caesar could not: bring Britain under Roman rule. The invasion began with 4 legions, supported by auxiliaries, a force of around 40,000 men. They landed in the southeast of Britain, near modern-day Kent. The Britons resisted fiercely, led by King Caratacus of the Catavellani tribe. The fighting was brutal. Thick forests, muddy rivers, and ambush tested the Roman discipline. But the legions pushed forward, building roads and forts as they went, slowly grinding down resistance. Claudius himself did not lead the initial invasion. He remained in Rome until the campaign had already begun. But when the decisive moment came, when the legions reached the stronghold of Camulodunum, modern Colchester, Claudius arrived in person. The emperor, mocked all his life as weak, now rode at the head of Rome's armies. His presence gave the campaign its final push. With elephants brought across the sea to shock the Britons, Claudius led the assault on Camulodunum. The city fell, and with it, Roman power was cemented in southern Britain. It was a stunning victory. Claudius had done what Julius Caesar could not. He had brought Britain under Rome's control. After the victory, Claudius spent just 16 days in Britain, long enough to secure the conquest, take the surrender of tribes, and oversee the establishment of a new province. Then he returned to Rome, leaving his generals to continue the fight. But those 16 days changed everything. Claudius was no longer just a cautious ruler hidden behind freedmen and guards. He was a conqueror. When Claudius returned to Rome, the city erupted in celebration. He was granted a triumph, Rome's highest military honor. He rode in a chariot through the streets, his soldiers marching behind him, spoils of war on display. The people cheered. The Senate had no choice but to honor him. Statues were raised. Coins were struck in his name, showing him as the conqueror of Britannia. The man who had once been mocked as a cripple was now a hero. The conquest of Britain was more than military glory. It was a symbol. Claudius had proven himself to his people, his Senate, and even to history. He was not merely surviving on the throne, he was shaping the destiny of the empire. Britain would remain part of Rome for nearly 4 centuries, and it was Claudius, the underestimated emperor, who brought it into the fold. Chapter 7. The Betrayal of Messalina. While Claudius proved himself as an administrator and conqueror, his personal life was far less stable. At the heart of this chaos was his third wife, Valeria Messalina. Messalina was young, ambitious, and breathtakingly beautiful. She was also ruthless, cunning, and, as history remembers her, dangerously unfaithful. Her marriage to Claudius was less about love and more about power. For Claudius, she provided a connection to Rome's noble families. For Messalina, Claudius was a gateway to the imperial throne. Messalina quickly gained influence at court. She surrounded herself with allies and removed rivals through manipulation. Ancient historians describe her as a woman of insatiable desire, both for power and for pleasure. They claim she had numerous lovers, senators, nobles, even actors and gladiators. Whether exaggerated or not, these stories fed into her reputation as the most scandalous woman in Rome. But the most infamous tale of Messalina's betrayal came in the year 48 AD. According to Suetonius and Tacitus, Messalina took her ambitions too far. She became involved with a senator named Gaius Caelius, wealthy, handsome, and politically connected. Their relationship was not hidden in the shadows. It was flaunted openly. Caelius divorced his wife to be with Messalina. They appeared together in public. And then, shockingly, they went further. Messalina and Caelius staged what ancient sources describe as a mock wedding. While Claudius was away from Rome, Messalina publicly married Caelius, complete with rituals and witnesses. To many, this looked less like an affair and more like an attempt to replace Claudius himself. The symbolism was clear. She was declaring her intent to overthrow the emperor. When Claudius learned of this betrayal, he was stunned. The emperor, who had survived intrigue after intrigue, who had outlived Tiberius and Caligula, was blindsided by his own wife. At first, Claudius did not believe it. His freedman advisors, Narcissus chief among them, had to convince him that the reports were true. Messalina had not simply strayed. She had plotted treason. The response was swift. Claudius, guided by Narcissus and his loyal freedmen, ordered the arrest of Caelius and his allies. They were executed without delay. The conspiracy was crushed before it could spread. Messalina, however, begged for mercy. She sent messages to Claudius pleading for forgiveness. Some sources claim she even tried to meet him face to face, hoping her beauty could sway him as it had so many times before. But Narcissus knew that hesitation could be fatal. If Claudius wavered, Messalina might survive and plot again. Without waiting for Claudius' direct command, Narcissus gave the order: Messalina must die. In the gardens of the palace, Messalina was cornered. A soldier offered her the chance to take her own life, as was the Roman custom, but she hesitated, unable to do it. And so the soldier struck her down. News of her death was brought to Claudius during a banquet. The emperor, according to legend, did not stop eating. He merely asked for another cup of wine and ordered the conversation to continue. Whether this story is true or embellished, it reflects the cold reality. Messalina was gone, and Claudius moved on. The man mocked as weak and indecisive had shown that he could be ruthless when betrayed. The fall of Messalina was more than a personal tragedy. It revealed the dangers of the imperial household, where ambition, lust, and betrayal could bring down even an empress. For Claudius, it was a painful reminder that while he could rule Rome wisely, he could not always control those closest to him. Chapter 8. Agrippina and Nero. After the downfall of Messalina, Claudius was left humiliated and wary. Yet Rome demanded that its emperor not remain alone, and so in 49 AD he married again. His new wife was Agrippina the Younger, a woman of imperial blood, immense ambition, and a will as sharp as any general's sword. Agrippina was no stranger to power. She was the great-granddaughter of Augustus, sister of Caligula, and mother to a young boy named Lucius Domitius Ahenobarbus, the future Nero. From the beginning, she saw Claudius not as a husband, but as a stepping stone for her son's destiny. Agrippina was unlike Messalina. Where Messalina ruled through scandal and passion, Agrippina ruled through strategy. She flattered Claudius, gained the loyalty of his freedmen, and removed rivals with precision. Soon she persuaded Claudius to adopt her son, Nero, as his heir, placing him above Claudius' own biological son, Britannicus. It was a masterstroke of politics. The Julio-Claudian dynasty would pass not to Claudius' blood, but to Agrippina's. As Nero grew older, Agrippina ensured he received the finest education. The philosopher Seneca became his tutor, teaching him rhetoric, philosophy, and the art of governance. But beneath the polish of learning, Agrippina was shaping Nero not into a philosopher king, but into a weapon she could wield. Claudius, meanwhile, seemed increasingly sidelined. His court was no longer his own. Agrippina dominated the palace, and even senators deferred to her influence. But Claudius was no fool. As the years passed, whispers grew that he regretted his decision. Some sources claim he began to favor Britannicus once again, fearing that Agrippina's ambition would endanger him. Then, in the year 54 A.D., disaster struck. Claudius fell gravely ill after a banquet. Ancient historians allege that he was poisoned, some say with mushrooms, his favorite dish. And suspicion, then and now, points directly at Agrippina. The accounts differ on the details. Some say the poison slipped into his food, others that a doctor finished the deed with a poisoned feather. What is consistent is the outcome. Claudius never recovered. On October 13th, 54 A.D., the man who had stumbled into power mocked as a fool, underestimated as a ruler, was dead. Agrippina moved quickly. She declared that Claudius had named Nero as his heir. The Senate confirmed it, and Rome awoke to find itself with a new emperor, Nero, a boy of just 16. Agrippina had achieved her goal. She had raised her son to the throne of Rome, but in doing so she set in motion a reign that would descend into infamy and terror. Claudius was deified after his death, proclaimed a god by the Senate. Temples were built in his honor, his name etched into the annals of Rome's divine emperors. Yet behind the marble and gold, the memory of Claudius remains complex. Was he a puppet controlled by his wives and advisors? Or was he a shrewd survivor who navigated the storms of Rome with quiet cunning? Perhaps he was both, a man underestimated in life, yet capable of achievements that changed Rome forever. And so ends the story of Claudius, Rome's unlikely emperor. He entered history as a crippled scholar, dismissed as a fool. He ruled as a builder, a reformer, and a conqueror. He survived betrayal, scandal, and family treachery. And though he left the empire in the hands of Nero, his legacy endures as proof that even the most unlikely men can change the world.